Good afternoon and welcome to CW's webinar on the recently released World Natural and Synthetic Graphite Market Forecast Report 2018 edition, the first one of the kind to be released by the CW Group. The report includes a 5-year forecast to 2023 of the graphite market with a focus on end-user consumption and how these segments will evolve in their graphite consumption and shape the graphite market. The report also includes a regional and country level analysis, but today specifically we are looking at the high level global view in an attempt to put forward the highlights of our study on the mineral that is now deemed the indispensable mineral of the new millennium. I'm sure most of you on today's call are somehow familiar with the market, so my goal today is to present the market angle of graphite with a focus on trends, opportunities and challenges, as well as supply issues and their impact on the market size in dollars. I'll start off with a short introduction to our company. As you may know, we are a boutique advisory group based in the United States with a specific focus on providing market intelligence and the shape of research products or consulting projects to clients from varied industries, as you can see here, the cement industry, the steel, metals and mining industry, the chemicals industry. We're also looking at dry bulk cargoes, power, energy and solid fuels, be them fossil or alternative. Cement is our core industry, but in the recent past, we managed to diversify our portfolio of industries to include the likes of paper and pulp, the quicklime industry, the refractories industry, the petcoke industry, and of course, as is the case today, the graphite industry. To go through our scope of work, and to start off with the advisory branch, we have been lucky here to work with clients from around the world and from various industries and walks of life, be it cement manufacturers, cement equipment, petcoke manufacturers and end users, lime manufacturers, but also with investment bankers, international funds, and many other projects in the scope branch from commercial and technical due diligence to strategy formulation and pretty much everything in between. We have successfully helped large and small corporations alike realign their businesses and meet their business goals through the power of a third eye perspective on their businesses. To move on to our research branch, to which the report at hand belongs, our focus here is to provide analyzed data in the shape of actionable information that is meant to help as many business professionals as possible make highly informed business decisions. Our research work, such as the case of the report I'll be presenting today, is always informed by both secondary and primary research, which I believe gives us a unique presence on the business intelligence market and definitely differentiates us from other market intelligence providers. Of course, all of our research work has a forecasting element, which is often the result of combining qualitative and quantitative analysis, which, of course, when mixed seamlessly, help us reach the most accurate possible results in our attempt to gauge what could happen in the coming years for the industries that we track. And last but not least, our media branch is meant to keep subscribers up to date with the latest news from the many industries that we cover: building materials, pulp and paper, bulk shipping, the coal industry, and perhaps most relevant for today's call, the petcoke industry. Our colleagues from the media department also publish a monthly magazine on the cement industry, but also covering other industries as well if they're connected to the cement one. Now, to jump straight into what is it that we are talking about today and how did we come to the results that I'll be presenting today, a quick introduction to what this report is. The report is a result of the extensive research of this particular market, grounded in a deep understanding of the end users of the graphite industry, looking at their past consumption, current, and future consumption. Now, as you'll see in the presentation today, the market has experienced quite a steady growth path, which at its core is determined by the wide usage of the mineral for various technological and industrial purposes. Now, new usages of the material actually continue to emerge. Hence, our starting point, as you'll see in the methodology slide, has been the minerals and users and the particular trends that shape their production levels. Now, an understanding of end usages has allowed us to size the market's tonnage by type and by region, while pricing movements, which vary tremendously between natural and synthetic graphite, enable us to understand current and future market value in dollars. Now, you can see here, and of course I'll go in more detail further on, but you can see here the main end users we analyze in the report. Now, important to mention that the electrode, refractory foundries, and crucibles and batteries market, so the first three you can see here, make for around 80% of the graphite global consumption currently. So we really made it a point to pay a lot of attention to these segments that have the largest material impact on the global and regional graphite consumption markets. Of course, we're looking at the other markets as well, all of them important in their own way in impacting the market. And you'll see in the pages of the report how segments that we categorized under the, let's say, other segmentation are growing this year and most likely in the coming 5 years as well. We're also looking at the competitive structure of the industry, and in that sense, we profile graphite miners along with synthetic graphite producers, two types of, let's say, companies whose scope of business may sometimes intersect, but often does not. So we're looking at companies such as Ceylon Graphite, Mason Graphite, Triton Materials, Asbury Carbons, SGL Carbons, Graphtec International, and many, many others. As I mentioned, our market sizing and forecasting methodology is deeply rooted in a understanding of the industries that make use of graphite, their country-specific production levels, and of course their graphite consumption coefficients depending on regional location and on the industry itself. So we're sizing the market through a bottom-up approach with an augmented awareness of differences between consumption particularities among segments and among regions and countries. Our models is also informed by qualitative information, which enabled us to understand market dynamics, which I believe is perhaps the most important part of our study, as well as the potential impact these dynamics will have on the future of the market. And I'll explain this in more detail in the coming pages. Now, unlike our methodology and how we built this report up, we'll actually work today through the presentation of the highlights of the report in a top-down way, starting actually with the global and regional size of the graphite market. But first off, what I'd like to do is to introduce what I believe are the three main themes that we can consider to be driving forces for the graphite market. In the same notes in which I started the presentation, like I said, graphite is considered the indispensable resource of the new millennium. Its importance is so overarching that it has been deemed a critical resource by the largest global economies in the world, which consider it indispensable for industrial and technological forwardness. And this is why graphite is now both a mined and made material, with more than 100 applications in various industries and technologies. As a made material, through the process of graphitization of coke, Synthetic graphite, as you'll see in the next page, is gaining market share as a often purer alternative to natural graphite, in particular as an alternative to flake graphite. Now, the second theme I'd like to point out is that there is a variety of end usages that provide a market with positive perspectives and stability. Why do I say that? The market size of graphite, as well as its pricing, they're no longer dependent on the whims of what used to be the two largest end user segments, the electrodes and the refractory market. But both pricing and market size are bullish and, let's say, highly protected from declines by the fast-growing electrical vehicles and energy storage applications, where both synthetic and natural graphite can be used. Other end usage segments that have yet to be, let's say, exploited to their fullest potential, such as graphene and carbon fiber, will further add to the market's growth, both in terms of value and volume. Now, by 2023, we believe that the battery segment will amount for almost the same amount of graphite consumption as the current largest end user, which is the electrode market, and actually outpace the consumption of graphite coming from the refractories, foundries, and crucibles market. Now, all is good, but nevertheless, there's always a drawback, regardless of what industry we're talking about. In the specific case of graphite, we're speaking about a difficult supply chain model to navigate, as the supply chain, the global supply chain of both natural and synthetic graphite is concentrated in China, which controls, at the moment, more than half of the global graphite production if we aggregate natural and synthetic production of graphite. Which means that, as it was the case, if some of you on this call remember, as it was the case in 2017, global prices of graphite are placed at the end of, say, a domino made out of market movements mostly happening in China, such as coke shortage, very fast demand growth, and reduction in supply. And to refresh your memory, in the first months of 2017, synthetic graphite electrode prices augmented globally ninefold over the same period, as compared to the same period of the previous year, for the reasons that I mentioned above, most of it connected to a very tight supply and a very much enlarging demand. And to wrap this, let's say, topic here, interesting to see now how natural graphite manufacturers in China are actually aiming at outsourcing raw graphite supply for natural graphite consumption, because they're planning to clean up old and inefficient mines after a lot of both domestic and international pressure. And of course, this will add further supply pressure. Now, with these key, let's say, themes in mind, and to look at some actual numbers, we can see here how the global graphite market has been trending in the past and how we believe it will grow in the future. At the bottom of the chart, you can see the market size and tonnage of natural graphite, whereas at the top, you can see the market size of synthetic graphite. To speak a bit about numbers here, over the past 5-year period, the graphite market registered a 8.2% CAGR growth in terms of tonnage to reach 3.75 million tons, whereas the synthetic graphite segment was the fastest growing one of the two, growing at a CAGR of 12.5% in the period. Now, why did this happen? Apart from the, let's say, supply gut from the natural graphite part, the proliferation of the usage of graphite in lithium-ion applications, specifically, of course, for electric vehicles, has led to this fast-paced growth. Moreover, the growing requirements for purer graphite in, let's say, traditional applications of the material aided the growth of the sub-segment. Another important thing to mention here is the replacement of BOF steel making processes with electric arc furnaces, which of course use electrodes, in developing markets and in particular in China. This has been a factor that has aided the growth of the synthetic segment significantly and will definitely continue to do so in the coming years. Now, on the other hand, for the coming 5-year period, so we're speaking 2018-2023, we anticipate that the graphite market will grow faster than in the past. So we're looking at an aggregated growth of 11% CAGR to 6.31 million tons, with synthetic graphite again carrying most of the growth. But what is important to mention here is that natural graphite's market size will likely grow at a CAGR of 8.5%, so that's 6% points above the 2013-2018 growth. And this is reflecting the increased interest of mining companies in natural graphite. I'm speaking here about mega companies such as Sierra Resources and Triton Materials, which have been investing tremendously in Mozambique, for instance. And why are they doing this? Mostly because lithium-ion batteries that are used in electric vehicles can use both synthetic and natural graphite, as long as it's of very high purity. And of course, natural graphite, as you will see in the coming pages, is much cheaper than synthetic graphite. Now, to look at the market regionally, and if we compare on the left side of the page, the 2013-2018 period to the 2018-2023 one, we'd see that the market shares have remained quite similar over the following years. Of course, there's a big difference in market. We're looking at a market that by 2023 we believe will almost double in tonnage compared to 2018. But to speak about, let's say, the main movers of the market regionally and at the country level as well, the leading consumer of graphite at a global level is indisputably China, which of course has an outstanding effect on the total consumption of graphite in Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific currently makes for about 70% of graphite consumption at the global level, but China makes for around 40% of global graphite consumption at a global level. China also makes for 76% of regional production. And as I previously mentioned, all movements happening on the Chinese market dictate what's going to happen in terms of market dynamics, both regionally and globally. Now, currently consumption in China is made out of an almost equal split between natural and synthetic graphite, but that is likely to change quite soon as the authorities are trying to phase out natural graphite mining and processing operations due to the pollutions they're causing and the backlash they're getting from both the local population and international bystanders. What the authorities are planning to do is to invest in smaller, new graphite mining operations in China and in large mining operations in other parts of the world. So by the end of our forecasting period, we expect that China will actually still maintain its large production share. To still stick on the China subject and to give you some numbers, by the end of 2018, we anticipate that China's total graphite demand will be 1.4 million tons, while production will be 2.1 million tons. Now, growth actually picked up substantially in the 2016-2017 period when the government pushed for more electric arc furnace steel production. And this, of course, led to a much needed bump in electrodes demand. Coupled with a spike in batteries manufacturing for electric vehicles, solar panels, smartphones, laptops, tablets, demand increased by an estimated 7.6% year on year in 2018. China already supplies graphite to the largest battery manufacturers in the world, such as Samsung, LG Chem, and Panasonic, all of whom also have production centers for lithium-ion batteries in the Chinese territory. Like I said, there's a lot of talk happening right now about high levels of pollution, and it's it's easy to see a future with a lot more risks associated with this segment. The government might step up and crack down on pollution sources and slow the growth of the segment. To look, say, across the Pacific at the Americas, we're also looking at the quick-paced growth in consumption of graphite, mostly due to gains in demand in 2017 and 2018 in the United States, as an effect of the popularization of electric vehicles and the revitalization of the steel industry, both in the US and in Canada. Now, the US actually imports all of its natural graphite needs, but is a large synthetic graphite manufacturer, which actually comes somehow in contradiction with the fact that it's the largest graphite consumer in the region, both looking at natural and synthetic graphite. The current largest end user in the US is the electrodes market for electric arc furnaces steel plants. If we look at, let's say, the percentage split between BOF and EAF steelmaking in the US, EAF steelmaking makes for 40% of total steel output. Now, of course, the steel industry suffered something of a setback in the 2014-2016 period, but it is anticipated to grow, given that the US government is very active in taking measures to encourage domestic production of steel in the detriment of steel imports. Nevertheless, even though the EF electrode segment is the largest, that doesn't mean it's the fastest growing one. The fastest growing one, both in the 2013, 2018, 2018, 2023 periods, is the battery segments, and we're looking specifically at the electric vehicles sector. Tesla's Nevada Gigafactory, which is anticipated to be fully operational in 2020, but it's already manufacturing some lithium-ion batteries, has been essential in the, let's say, our shaping of future prospects for the US graphite consumption. Now, though I've already touched on some regional and country level particularities, let's now go to see how the global graphite consumption of end user segments have changed over the years and how it will evolve in the coming ones. And we'll also look at the market value and how, let's say, pricing is evolving. Now we're looking here at let's say, relative sizes of the main end user segments, which we are tracking in terms of shares out of total graphite global consumption. Just to give you an idea a bit about the scale of segments and how have things changed 2013 versus 2018 and afterwards 2018 versus what we believe will happen in 2023. Now, of course, what stands out is the growth of the battery sector, which has been driven by the popularity of electrical vehicles and hybrid vehicles in the US and Europe, and actually increasingly so in Asia, be it developed or developing markets. Anticipated state incentives will likely make hybrid and electric vehicles a highly common sight on the roads of developing countries quite soon, and that will lead to an even faster growth. Now, to give you a sense of the current size of the batteries' usage of graphite tonnage, from using 36,000 tons of graphite a year globally in 2013, the segment now consumes an estimated 500,000 tons of graphite. Now, though not yet as large as the electrodes or the refractory segment, which consume an estimated 1.5 million and 1.1 million tons of graphite respectively, the battery segment growth has been, let's say, impressive to say the least, and has made mining companies, as I mentioned, with no experience in the graphite market, to enter quite aggressively and move quickly in purchasing mines and mining rights, especially in Africa. Manufacturers anticipate that consumption coming from the batteries market will prevent also the previously recurrent say, boom and burst pricing developments on the graphite market, given that the general expectation is that there's a third growing and large end user segment that will assure a growing demand, and coupled with that, producers who will assure a stable supply. Now, if we fast forward to 2023, we do believe that the batteries market will continue to be the driving force for graphite consumption. That is not to say, however, that other markets will shrink tonnage-wise, even though their share, let's say in percentages, which is what you can see here in the relative size of the bubbles, will be smaller. We also have to consider that the graphite market itself will likely almost double in terms of consumption between mishap here. Will also double in terms of consumption from 2018 to 2023. My apologies, just there's been an error here. So the left side image looks at 2018 and the other one at 2023. Now, by 2023, we anticipate that consumption of graphite for the batteries industry will actually triple when compared to 2018, and it will make for almost 26% of the graphite market, while the electrodes market will actually remain the largest with 30% of graphite demand. Why is that? The conversion of the Chinese steel industry from being majoritarily BOF to becoming increasingly more EAF will continue for sure, and will lead to increased demand of electrodes and for synthetic graphite. This will also not only happen in China. Of course, we're looking at markets such as Russia, which is actually making very serious advances in replacing outdated steel production with EAF1. Now, important to look here is at the other segment. If in 2018 the segment made for around 2% of demand, we anticipate that the segment will make for around 4% in 2013. Now, this growth might look very small, but actually the market itself, if we look at it materially, will double in terms of tonnage. Here, we're looking at end users such as carbon fiber and graphene, which will carry the weight of the growth for this particular segment. As we anticipate that they will become more mainstream industrial materials, and not as they are at the moment, more of the unicorns of materials used by a few industries with a lot of potential to invest in expensive materials. So we really do believe that they will become a preferred material for a lot of industries, and that will, of course, have a positive impact on their graphite consumption. And now to look at how the market size in $1 billion has evolved in the past and how it will in the future. And again, we're looking separately at natural and synthetic graphite because in this case, particularly, their pricing is so different that it would be a falsehood to put them both in the same bucket. Synthetic graphite can cost 2 to 3 times more than natural graphite. Of course, depends to what natural graphite we're comparing it, be it flake amorphous or vein, and of course, depending on in which geography we're talking about. This detail in particular is discussed in the pages of the report, where we're looking at pricing in the top markets that we track, which are the United States, Canada, Brazil, Germany, France, Russia, China, Japan, and India. But nevertheless, to look at it globally, we're looking at a very quick pickup in pricing, especially for graphite market, which coupled with an increased consumption of synthetic graphite led to, let's say, a dominant market size for synthetic graphite. Nevertheless, both natural and synthetic graphite have increased in pricing over the last years. And of course, this is a normal market movement given that demand is growing. So manufacturers and miners alike are taking cues from the growing market demand and adjusting their pricing accordingly. Now, over the next 5-year period, what we believe is that the total market size in dollars for the graphite market will grow at a CAGR of 16%, which is 6% points actually below the growth recorded in the 2013-2018 period. Why is that? We believe that actually there will be an increased usage of natural graphite. It will not surpass that of synthetic graphite, but there will definitely be an increased usage of natural graphite, given that processors are truly making an effort to meet the high purity standards of graphite end users. Now, synthetic graphite, as I mentioned, is often priced 2 to 3 times more than natural graphite. In the coming years, we believe that natural graphite will actually increase in pricing quite a bit, just because processors will have to make up for the growing cost of processing the material to get the highest purity possible. Now, that being said, in the of conclusion, and I say apart from the main themes that I presented at the beginning of the webinar, there are, let's say, other 3 conclusions that we'd like to highlight as the result of the report. Would like to mention again that this is a high-level helicopter view that we're giving today. In the actual pages of the report, you can find country profiles, regional profiles, and of course company profiles as well, and more detailed market dynamic analysis for each of the regions and country analyzed. But to close our webinar today, what we believe will happen in the future, and we put forward these conclusions as, let's say, guiding forces for the future. We believe that China will continue to be very fierce in assuring cleaner, natural graphite resourcing locally, specifically because it's suffering from a lot of pressure from international watchdogs, and because it supplies a lot of international companies. China will also invest in foreign mining, and all of this will be a movement to protect its current quasi-monopoly over the global supply. Now, by 2023, we'll be looking at something a bit different in terms of top graphite end users, though they will remain the same. We're looking at electrodes, refractories, and batteries. If in 2018 combined they made for 84% of the market, by 2023 we think they will make for 58% of the market due to the proliferation of other end users. And I'm not speaking here only about carbon fiber and graphene. I'm also speaking about nuclear applications and lubricants, friction products, recarburizers, and so on and so forth. On top of that, we're definitely going to see a constant diversification of usages, which I believe will lead to new production methods and degraphitization of other carbon-rich materials rather than just pet coke. That, of course, will cause some sort of turbulence on the current supply pattern, but that is to be seen, and of course is dependent on how technology evolves in that sense. That being said, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found our presentation interesting. If you have any questions regarding today's presentation or the report itself, feel free to contact me, and of course you can check more information on our website. Both the video recording of this presentation and the PDF of the material will be made available to you shortly, so please hang on to that. In 1 or 2 days it will drop in your inboxes. Thank you so much again, and have a great rest of the day.